We're going to spend about 40 minutes about talking through how we see enterprises tackling the problem of digital transformation and why they're doing it, really. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by two of our customers. So DP Prakash, who's the Global Head of Innovation at Global FOUNDRIES, and Satish Kumar, who's an infrastructure engineer with Autodesk. So we're going to hear some of their stories later in this session about how they're tackling digital transformation. So let's start out with a definition, because digital transformation means different things to different people depending on whether you're from the business, whether you're from technology. So we'll try and unpack this idea a little bit, and that hopefully you can go away with a better perception of what digital transformation will mean for your particular enterprise or business that you're involved with. So when I first started researching this story, this topic, I should say, I came across this great story from the Wall Street Journal. And it was an interview with a number of CIOs globally who have kind of said, let's stop talking about the word digital transformation, stop using this phrase. And the reason that they think of it this way is because it's something that enterprises should be doing on a continual basis, something that they're going to evolve over time. So digital transformation has no fixed definition. It means different things for different people. And you can see here, Paul Chapman from Box has come out and said that this is something that we continually do and something that we're always pursuing in order to stay relevant to our customers and to serve the needs of those customers in the best way possible. So let's think about what a definition could look like. Like I said, it's going to be different for every enterprise. If you're a traditional enterprise who's been around for 100 years and you do manufacturing, that's going to be a very different story for a company that was born in the last few years, which is maybe already a very digital-enabled business. So digital transformation could mean we take technology and we integrate it into all aspects of our business. So we take those analog processes that we may have today, and then we find a new, more modern way of dealing with those particular problems, and then obviously serving back to our customers and serving back to our business users. The third is actually more on the customer side, so closing the gap between what modern digital native customers want and what we're delivering to them today. I think there's been some really great examples here in Singapore over the last few years where they've said, we just want to get out of the way of the customer. We want to be invisible to them. We want them to consume our products and services, but we don't want to have any friction in place. And that's really what customers are often asking for today. If you don't have a digital channel strategy, you don't have a way of engaging with people through mediums or channels other than voice and text, that can create a mismatch in expectations from what the customer believes they expect and want from their providers that they purchase from, and what we're actually delivering to them today. So I did a little bit more research on this, and I found some very interesting data points that I'd like to share with you. So this chart represents the rolling average age of a company in the Standard & Poor's 500. So in 1995, the average S&P 500 company was 61 years old. By 2015, that had reduced to 17 years. So in 20 years, we've had a 72% decrease in the average lifespan of one of these companies. And the S&P 500 is usually the leaders of the industries that they're part of. They're the greatest and best, and they have the biggest market share, and they have the biggest customer base. So what's really brought this on, and one final stat that I came across, which was very alarming, in 2017, on average, an S&P 500 company was being replaced every 2 weeks, which I just found to be a staggering statistic to work with. So, in the face of this disruption that enterprises are facing, in the challenges of being able to transform themselves to meet those customer needs, how do they respond? So, IDC has identified that analytics is going to be the #1 digital initiative in 2019 for enterprises. So this is data visualization, being able to leverage the existing information that we collect about our customers, the behaviors, understanding what their preferences are and trying to actually have a really good view and a really good understanding of what those customer needs are. And then moving into the more sophisticated space of machine learning. So machine learning is something you've probably heard a lot about today. It's a real technology, it's a real capability that many enterprises are now turning towards in order to better leverage the data that they've got. The second stat was 30% of the G2000 are going to spend 10% of revenue on digital initiatives. So again, a very big commitment from these large captains of industry about where they're going to divert their investment in terms of tackling some of these challenges. And finally, within looking out the 4-year forecast, IDC estimates about $2 trillion being spent on digital initiatives. So a really, really substantial set of data points there to say this transformation thing is real, and it's what a lot of enterprises are now trying to frame about how they're going to tackle this particular problem. So today, we're not going to give you a complete roadmap, but what I hope is that we can examine some of the core pillars or aspects of what makes a digital transformation program successful. And then maybe just a few guiding principles for each of those areas about how we could potentially just get started with some small changes to the way that we do business. So one take on what digital transformation means, if it's not a program, it's not a one-time thing, it's something that we're going to be doing year on year in terms of innovating on behalf of our customers, is to boil it down to just some simple problems. And I think if you were to ask any CIO or CEO what are the top 2 problems that they're always working on in their enterprise business, it's going to be these 2 things. And the first is just simply improving customer experience. That insatiable demand from our customers to be always delivering more, always being able to offer them new capabilities, being able to innovate on their behalf is something that's never going to go away. And that's a really good problem to have because it forces us as a business to ensure that we're always thinking about how we can be optimizing that experience rather just leaving things at the status quo where we might start to atrophy in the eyes of the customer. And the second is sustaining or reducing operational cost. I think if you work in enterprise, you've probably heard the phrase, do more with less. And this is a constant pressure that's on all of us today. And it's really because you've got these 2 levers in your control, which is being able to improve that customer experience and reduce or sustain the amount of investment and capital you need to actually make these happen. But there's a lot of dynamics that are outside of your control. So regulatory pressures, reducing margins, all of these things continue to add pressure to the business to achieve these outcomes. So I spoke about the pillars of digital, and really, from the thinking that I've had and from the discussions that I've had with many customers who are on this journey, it really boils down to 3 distinct categories, and that's culture, people, and technology. So if we're to take these 3 broad areas that we need to focus on to be a digitally transformed enterprise, how do we prioritize them and how do we allocate investment to them? So with the word digital, the first thing that springs to mind is, well, technology must be a core part of the digital transformation story. And so you ask a few people about where they start, and then generally they say, we focus on the tech, we look at things like Agile and DevOps, and then the people and culture sort of follow. But the reality is, it's often the technology is the kind of the easy part in that respect. So always just trying to work out where we rebalance the investment and where we rebalance the priority for running a digital transformation effort is a difficult thing. And most people actually end up here. They do a few experiments, they don't necessarily get the results they want, and they adjust those investment levels. And we find out that culture is probably the number 1 thing in terms of a successful digital transformation effort. So closely followed behind that is people. We need people to adapt to the new way, the new program. and really get behind it and be able to invest. And then really the technology is there, and of course it's important, but it's not the absolute core part of a successful program. So to speak more a little bit on the culture and people aspect, cultural change is hard. I don't think this is like a really surprising thing for anyone here. It's a difficult thing to implement. It's not like we say, tomorrow we're going to start working from this way to this way, and our values are going to shift from here to here, and you know, it's just a black and white change. Not the case at all, especially in very large enterprises where we have very entrenched ways of doing business and ways of interacting with our customers. But I want you to keep one thing in mind. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single time. So I've paraphrased a very famous business scientist, Peter Drucker there. And there's a reason behind that. It's not that strategy is unimportant. You can pick up any study done from kind of the 1950s, 1960s onwards on the value of culture over strategy. So it's not to say that strategy is unimportant, but rather that an empowering culture in our organization is one that is going to have a surer outcome of success. It's just as simple as that. All of the empirical studies reflect it. So let's dive into this a little bit more about where kind of we are today. So I found a study of 450 directors of UK public companies. 20% of those 450 said they spent any time managing culture. 60% said they felt they were responsible for setting the culture within their organization. So 60% said they felt responsible, but only 20% actually put any effort into managing the culture within their organization. 25% of those only did any formal management around the culture within their business. So these are programs, these are initiatives, these are changing the way we hire, changing our organizational structures, these sorts of things. And the rest of them, so the other 75%, the only measure that they had of whether their culture was successful or working or not working was they relied on feedback events. So HR issues, rule breaches, ethics breaches. This was the only indicator that they had whether their actual culture plan was working within their business. So here is, I think, some guiding principles that I'd like to share with you that may help you on that cultural and people transformation aspect. The first is simply defining your journey. I know this sounds quite obvious, but really having a vision about where you are today in terms of culture and how you hire people and how you manage them to where you want to get to. So if you're a very revenue-focused business today and you feel that you want to become much more customer-focused, that's the journey that you need to define and how you're going to get there. The second, which is always a little bit controversial, but stop hiring for specific jobs. In most large enterprises, when we bring a new employee into that company, we want that employee to be happy and productive, and we want them to have a long and prosperous career within the enterprise. The reality is most people don't stay in the same roles that they were hired for. They get promoted, they move sideways into different areas. So really, being focused on the cultural fit in terms of hiring rather than the functional fit is one way to kind of tackle that. And I'm not saying that you don't hire people for their skills. Of course, those skills are important, and we need to make sure that we bring the right skills into the organization. It's just perhaps re-examining where the balance is in terms of how much weight and emphasis you put on culture versus functional fit. The third is rewarding failure as well as success. So to get any sort of major innovation happening from our existing teams, we need the ability to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable and are able to run experiments without fear of reprisal or whatever that might be. So being able to celebrate the failures as well as the successes is something that you see in many companies who have gone on this journey, and that's a really big change in the way that they operate the culture. Removing constraints. So if you went to the smartest people in your enterprise, in the technology side or the business side, and you said, please dream up whatever you want, and don't have any of those mental constraints of, oh, we have challenges around X, or we have challenges around our risk team or whatever it is. So really free thinking without that constraints is what's going to drive the big thinking that's required for a digital program. And finally, favoring organization over hierarchy. Again, moving towards the ability to move fast, experiment, innovate on behalf of the customer. We can't do that in large hierarchical organizations. Again, it's just the data doesn't stack up. So being able to break those teams down, get them focused on very specific problems, and have them solely focused on those problems and not worrying about all the other noise around them is a great way to take a first step and get people working on specific initiatives. So to talk more about the cultural and people transformation, I'm really pleased to invite DP Prakash of Global Foundries.
Good afternoon. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be discussing with you about my experiences from the semiconductor industry. Now, I'll be covering in the first 5 minutes what happened in the last 50 years in the semiconductors, what kind of innovation journey we've been on, and how that needs to change, and how culture will be integral to that. So here's a very personal journey from somebody who's spent about 3 decades in the semiconductor industry. If you look at innovation, innovation has been timeless since the time that man actually found fire. Imagine the conversation that must have happened in the cave. The first lady or man who actually found fire, say, here's fire, and people look at it and say, wow, that's something to be scared of, or is it something you want to use? AI, ML, AR, VR are trends that are the fancier versions of that fire today, and our goal is to, in Global Foundries, in the semiconductor factories, to make the most use of that. So let me share with you the journey that I'm on. So why Global Foundries? Why do we exist? We are the second largest foundry in the world. Foundry means we make semiconductor wafers for anybody who actually has a design. Our products are there all over. If you have a smartphone in your pocket, chances are 8 out of 10, you've bought a chip that came right out of our factories. and many desktops, laptops, supercomputers, Xbox, iPad, so many things, right? We've actually made. The journey in the semiconductor space is as follows. In the beginning, about let's say 60 years or so ago, there was an electron tub here, an electron tub there, and then we apply a voltage. The electron has to travel. That's the speed, the length the electron has to travel. That determines the speed. Then we said, okay, if we can actually make it smaller, electron has to travel less, so speed is actually better. So you have more chips in the same wafer. So it's faster, better, cheaper. Everybody wins. And we've been doing this for every 2 years, and that's the concept of Moore's law. But you do that after 60 years. What happens is I've been shrinking to the point now where there's not much room left to shrink, and that's the end of Moore's law. That's what you hear is going on. So we have to think about innovation, not just the predictable innovation of just shrink and then good things will happen, but we have to think about innovation differently. So we exist to ship wafers. We manufacture. It's a manufacturing services company, but today we have to innovate, from first principles. And those innovations actually are centered around business wins. In order to win in any business, you have to actually have a profit. Profit is revenue minus cost. Revenue for any semiconductor factory will be P times Q, asking price times the quantity of wafers. Price of your iPhone, you're not going to pay the same price for an iPhone 2 years from now. You're going to be asking for a lower price. Price erosion means P is going down, so quantity of wafers have to go up to compensate for that, to keep the product the same. So revenue. That's how you drive. So that means the tools, there are 1,000 tools, 1,500 tools in the factory floor, 3 football field size, $2 million to $100 million tools. They all have to be functioning with tool uptime. No airline will make money when the plane is on the tarmac. Planes, when they're flying, that's when they add revenue. Same thing with the tools. The tools have to be up and running. So innovation is about shipping more wafers at a lower cost point. So that is the journey that we're on. And in doing that, we have to think not just about, hey, let's just go shrink, right? We've been on that journey for 60 years. It's somewhat easier to do, even though it's complex. But now we have to think in terms of, hey, we've been doing this for 60 years in the industry. Why not go challenge every part of the work we do? There are 1,000 steps in making a chip. Every part of the work we do, ask yourself, what is the AI/ML strategy? How do we improve that particular step? What is my AR/VR strategy? So that's the changing the industry part of the work that, that I do. Values define who we are. So creating, products and solutions for our customers by embracing and partnering with our stakeholders and delivering with integrity. That's what we are about. So I told you why Global Foundries exists. Now, how do we create value? We create value through two strategic cornerstones. That's what guides us. The strategic imperatives. One is working with the right partners. Companies like Amazon, market leaders, PTC, a market leader, Gartner rated #1 for the AR space. These are among our top strategic partnerships in this innovation journey. So we generate petabytes of data, 10 factories, tons of data coming out, and we barely are able to look at 5% of the data. Rest of the 95% of the data is what we call dark data. We can't look at it. So that needs to change. We are saying take the big data, with the cloud transformation, use the AI/ML engines, and with the AR and VR, deliver those signals directly onto the lead indicator in the factory floor, as opposed to the PowerPoint culture. PowerPoint culture is that people who do on the factory floor, they do the work. People on one floor up, already away from the action, they're going to be looking at the data and analyzing them. Then there'll be weekly meetings. And then the data goes to the person who actually has to take action a while. This is all like too inefficient. So we are challenging that. We are saying AI/ML, the engines will actually talk directly to the AR output, and the people on the factory floor are going to be getting the feeds much early. So strategic partnerships is one of our imperatives. If you look at the second part of it is, this is something that will probably be applicable to many of the other industries. So hopefully you folks will find it interesting. If you're interested, write to me on LinkedIn, and I will work with you to share what we've learned in more greater detail. But the idea here is this, right? If value is being created not only through the strategic partnerships, but they have to be directed in 4 different directions. This is applicable for any factory environment. At the foundation level, we have what we call SOP creation, standard operating procedure creation. Any company needs SOPs. SOP, when I say SOP, what comes to your mind? Typically, if you're like me, it'll be text, rich, dense text, right? Problem is, dense text is not enough. People are visual. We can do it 10x faster with AR. We can train people in half the time with AR. And VR is transforming through tours, through recruiting and so on, immersive experiences. Operations, we can actually work with delivery at the point of need using hands-free, voice-activated headsets, AR headsets. Ability to do remote expert assist with AR. These things are transformational things we're actually leveraging right now. And along the way, redefining human-machine interface. My 8-year-old daughter says, "Dad, why do I need to use my remote to control this little robot vacuum? Why can't I talk to it?" She's already in the Alexa culture. She wants to talk to everything. And so she understands that's the more productive way of doing it. We have a $15 billion factory. We have 1,500 tools. Why would we not want to talk to the machines, right, and interrogate them in one more way? So Amazon's working with us and moving very fast in that space. Analytics is creating AI engines, predictive maintenance, corrective maintenance, image analytics, digital twin. This is the revolution that's going on. But end-to-end integrating, that's the direction that we are taking. And through all of this, unless there's a mindset that people are open to change, the organization is going to be like facing what we call terminal velocity, right? The viscosity of the fluid determines how much the speed is going to be. So same thing. So culture, very relevant, and that is the ultimate limiter of how fast change can come. Just a couple of slides to wrap it up. If you look at the AWS use cases, right? What do we do, right? So I told you why we exist. I told you how we create value, strategic partnerships, as well as through the value pyramid. Then the question is, okay, what have we done with it, right? So all the data that used to be in disparate places, stitching them together used to be our big challenge. So stitching the data together, right, would take 80% of the work, and 20% of it is actually doing something with it. So what we're doing now is putting all the data in one place. That is the very first step of cloud, integrating all the data in one place. Once you have that, the unified data platform, then all the signals that were invisible now become visible. You can now make decision making because you're able to see things. Your decision making can be faster, can be more optimized for tools. Remember what I said? Tools have to be up and running. If the tool is down, no good. So reducing the tool idle time is something that we can do now better. Increasing the tool capacity, that's something we can do better. Remember what I said? We exist to ship wafers. So this is how we actually are going to push on more wafers coming out to serve the customers. Ability to do things in a simple way. The thing I love about Amazon is they deal with complexity and they innovate on my behalf. That's one of their rallying points, customer obsession, and they help with simplicity. So if we can do it one click, what usually take 10 clicks, why not, right? So these are the kinds of stuff we do, and the chart on the bottom here, the left, it shows you this is one example. Blue bars, those are the wafers where we have to make some decisions about about where that particular lot wafers will actually has to go. And it used to take a certain amount of time, right? Because data is all over the place. But when it's integrated, the time to decisions, even when the volume of wafers, the blue bars are increasing, the time to make decisions is actually shorter. So that is the promise of the AWS cloud. And the returns are, tremendous. In the very beginning, we're seeing returns in the 5x range. So, and we're just starting the journey here. So, this is only going to get better. On the bottom right, you can see that there is the concept of the Sumerian AR interface, right? So, the thought here is, any of you, if you walk around and you can see that there is a avatar-based interface to getting your latte, right? It's actually up in the one floor up. Take a look at it. This is how Amazon is using AR to improve, fundamentally change the human-machine interface. When they came out with Alexa, little kids ran wild, and they said, yes, this is a better way, right? Whole generations growing up that way. Now they're going one step above, and they're saying, look, I can actually give human empathy. Which one would you like? Talk to a box and speak to it this way, that's one. The other is when the box comes alive with an avatar and looks at you, that's the facial recognition, and greets you saying, hi DP, this is my problem today. Here are my list of things. If I can integrate my 1,500 tools in that way, it gives me one more way to become more productive. So we challenged the Amazon team to come out with, that's enough, that's okay for a demo, but will it apply to me? 1 month, right, after the reInvent conference through December, challenged. The team rose to the challenge. We're able to produce this. Anyone interested, come talk to me. I'll actually show you. We're able to have that conversation, ability to speak, facial recognition, AI in the cloud comes back, and with gestures, it actually speaks back. Pretty exciting where we're going. So that's part of our roadmap here, working with Amazon. So what is the net here? The net is that we are on a growth trajectory in this cloud transformation. The question is not, should we go on cloud? The question is, how fast can we go? What is limiting us? If culture is limiting us, let's address it, right? So technology part is the easier part, as he just said, but the culture part of it is very real. That is the ultimate limiter to any organization. Right now, results actually are speaking for themselves. People are getting bought in, but there's a lot more work to be done on the culture side. And quick wins are an integral part of the whole thing. So Amazon's collaboration has been critical in this turnaround mode. And as I said, from tens of users to hundreds of users, from hundreds of use cases to thousands of users, tens to hundreds of use cases, hundreds to thousands of users. That's the journey that we're on today. So pretty exciting. Very happy to summarize where we're going. Number one, right? This may be unique from the Global Foundries semiconductor workplace side. We have in our environment, AI/ML integrating to AR/VR, AI talking to AR, right, holds the highest business value. So see if you're in your industry, if that works. Come talk to me. Like I said, LinkedIn, let's have a conversation about this. We're pushing the edge here. Second, in order to create and capture value, right, in this journey of AI/ML, AR/VR, there are other things also. Random robotic process automation and 5G, they're all coming. They're all going to be helpful. But AI/ML, AR/VR are the mega trends, arguably bigger than fire, right? that's how the promise is going to be, changing every part of the way we live and work. So cloud transformation is how we're going to manage this innovation, and that's foundational. So it's a given. Deepening the partnership, broadening the impact. That's where the journey with Amazon is. I just wanted to say one last thing, that strategic partnership with Amazon. Without that, a journey like this results in less than 12 months. 5x returns. These kinds of things are just not possible. And why Amazon is successful, and is that they made me believe as a customer that they're innovating on my behalf. When they say they're customer obsessed, it is not just something in a piece of paper that they show. It's actually something they live. And in the end, results actually speak. And that's, it becomes a virtuous cycle from there. So I wanted to say thank you. And I'll remind everybody about what Andy Jassy said back in reInvent in November. If you look at the last 100 years and see, how many companies still are around, right? It's a very, very, very small handful. Why is that the case? Companies, when they stop innovating around the customer experience, they die. They become irrelevant. Customer is having an environment where life is changing all the time, and constraints are, there are multiple forces at play. Amazon has staked a claim saying that I will be your trusted innovator by your side. You depend on me, you count on me, and I will be by your side. And I must say, from the experiences that I've had, they've made me a big believer. So, and my collaborators in Amazon are Surya and Ritesh and the rest of the team there. I can name them. I feel very confident that when I say something, they go rally, and that's not them alone. I see there's a whole army of people who believe in that way. So I'm very, very excited. This is just a start. I'm very excited about what we can achieve going forward into the future. The innovation journey to me, in one way, while Moore's law ends, it's opening the next door. And this is unpredictable innovation. Creativity is the only limit. Partner like Amazon is exactly what we need. Thank you very much.
Thanks, DP.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, DP. Awesome story. So we've tackled the two difficult bits, which is culture and people. So let's have a look at the technology side. So again, some guiding principles that might be able to help you get on this journey in terms of the technology transformation. And what we see being really successful is moving from project teams to product teams. So projects are usually time-bound, they're financially bound, and they're there to deliver a specific outcome. It doesn't take the long-term view that you may need in order to go on this actual journey. So moving towards design thinking or user-centered thinking, understanding the customer, identifying some of those experiments that you can run, that you can ideate. You can do them in a frugal way. You don't need to invest large amounts of money. Is really what a lot of companies are looking at now as their kind of future model for how they build systems and applications for their customers. The second is long-term product ownership, which I think goes back into the idea of moving away from projects. So making sure that the people who build and run and envision and create the technology that your customers are going to be essentially paying you for, they do have long-term ownership of that, and they're able to own their own product roadmap, they're able to own their direction because they're the ones who are going to be tied most closely to the customer need. Continuous delivery, probably no surprises there. Moving away from long releases to more short-term, smaller, de-risked delivery of capability. And DevOps, run what you write. So this is a great way to make software teams accountable. If you're the person who's being paged at 3 o'clock in the morning for a server that's fallen over, it generally encourages better behavior around how you actually create the reliability and resiliency of that particular service. And finally, reducing technical debt and lock-in. So this is something that we see a lot. If you were here for the keynote this morning, you would have heard about database freedom, moving away from vendors where you have a very big commitment in terms of finance and time. So we really encourage you to embrace open source, embrace those technologies that you can easily refactor at any point without any kind of change to the customer experience. So just thinking about the old world versus the new world, this is generally how we acquired IT. We would have monolithic applications. They'd be running in our own data centers that we're paying for and having to maintain. The project lifecycle was years. The budgets were in the millions of dollars. We have this lock-in, and we'd have lots of lawyers and contracts involved in order to actually acquire that capability. Not so much these days. I think the way that people are building products is a little bit different. So we look at weeks instead of years. So being able to take an idea, prototype it, ideate, and get it to the market really quick. The cost of experimentation has come right down, so For a few $100, we can launch some cloud-based resources. We can put that idea together. We can do it with a really small team. We can move fast. And then in the future, if we don't have any kind of technology lock-in, because we're always able to refactor without it being a huge multi-year effort. And very self-service, so no more signing contracts before we get anything done. So on the technology transformation side, it's my very great pleasure to introduce Satish Kumar from Autodesk Inc., who's going to talk about one of the projects they recently did.
Thank you, John. And hello, everybody. Myself, Satish from Autodesk. Most of you probably know who Autodesk is. Anyone don't know who is Autodesk? OK, so I can see a few hands. You cannot hear anything? OK, sorry. OK, so so we make software for the people who make anything. So as it could be an apartment that you are living, or the car that you are driving, or even the movies that entertain you. So it's a highly likely that during the design or construct phase, our Autodesk software was used. Our company vision is enabling our customers to imagine, design, and create a better world. So just like every other company, we have been through the digital transformation as well. And also, we are moving our business model to the subscription-based, which means as a customer company, it's all about adding incremental value to all our customers. So, so today, we are going to learn about our successful digital transformation with archive data. So basically, like we are going to learn how swiftly and effortlessly we migrated petabytes of archive data from on-prem to AWS using Amazon S3 and AWS Data Sync Service. So let me give you a quick background. I think we actually has used EMC data domain as our backup solution for many years. And recently, we moved to a new software. However, it has accumulated the data size of almost 2.4 petabytes of data over a period of time. And it has to be retained for a certain amount of years as per the business retention requirements. So the challenge here is the hardware is quite aged. And we are looking at the tech refresh. And as an estimation, it was expecting to cost us around $3 million. And it doesn't include the disaster recovery. If we include that, basically, it is going to double up our cost. So the cost is actually one of our challenge with the on-prem archive data solution. And so the alternative option available is basically migrating to Amazon S3. However, the challenge here is the migration. How to migrate 2.4 petabytes of data to Amazon S3 using Snowball. We needed around 30 plus Snowball devices. And it's quite intensive with time, effort, and administration, because the Snowball is basically a hardware that requires the logistics part, the procurement part, and the deployment. There is a lot of operational overhead, and the automation is required. So, and also, there is a professional services maybe incurred at additional costs. So, from the solution here is basically, we posed a question to ourselves. Do we really need to retain all these 2.4 petabytes of archive data? How about we revisit, revise, and remove the data that is no longer required to be part of the backup policy? That is where we collaborated with our application owners and legal teams internally, and we are able to revise our backup policy. Finally, we are able to do a massive cleanup of around 1.7 petabytes. So we are left with only 700 terabyte of data to be archived to Amazon S3. So now from the storage solution, so basically the data cleanup solved our problem number 1 with the petabyte of data. And the problem number 2 is basically the archive storage solution. Comparatively with the on-prem infrastructure, S3 is a low-cost model. And the data by natively is replicated to multiple zones within a region. So it is highly available and durable. And also, the cost model is basically consumption-based, which means you just need to pay the incremental cost. So this actually made us to take a decision to move to Amazon S3. And now, so how to connect these two dots? So we did a massive cleanup. We were able to reduce our data to copy footprint. And we have a solution. We should be heading towards Amazon S3. How to migrate 700 terabyte of data to Amazon S3? We didn't prefer to use snowball devices because those are hardware. Ideally, we want our solution to be no hardware involved because we want to avoid all kind of hassle with the operational and automation overhead. That's where we were researching some options, and fortunately, AWS has launched a new service called AWS Data Sync during the reInvent 2018. So for the most of the people who don't know what is AWS Data Sync, it is basically a fully managed data transfer service where you can migrate your data from on-prem to AWS S3 Glacier, and it supports NFS as its source side and S3 or EFS its destination side. We were very excited about this future because number one, there is no hardware involved. Number two, it is a fastest data transfer solution. And number three, we can deploy it and we can initialize it by ourselves. We don't need to engage any professional services here. So overall, and also the bonus point is it supports encryption, which is one of our requirements from our InfoSec point of view. So with this solution, we are able to migrate 700 terabyte of data from on-prem to Amazon S3 to Glacier using AWS Data Sync service. So now let's look at the business and operational benefit side of it. This solution is better. So better in the sense, basically, this AWS Data Sync is a fully managed data transfer service. And one engineer was able to initialize everything and manage the entire data transfer by himself. And most importantly, we avoided using 30+ snowball devices. So basically, it's not just about avoidance of the cost. It's also about the effort. We avoided all those effort with the operational overhead and also the subsequent automation. With a very less automation, we are able to deploy this solution on our own because it's a fully managed data transfer service. And faster. So we are able to reduce the setup time from months to minutes. With the AWS Snowball, probably it will take months to years. And with the data sync, it just took us minutes to get it started. And entire migration completed within 2.5 months of time. And cheaper in the sense, we avoided 50% of our migration costs. We saved a lot of time. And no professional services needed because we can do it by ourselves. It's a customer managed solution. In the backend is managed by AWS. And overall, we are able to reduce 4 times of our storage footprint by comparatively with AWS Glacier versus on-prem solution. So we encourage everyone to basically do the cleanup first before you start thinking about archive storage solution or the migration solutions. You should all think about what is really inside the data. Do we really need to migrate it? So you can think about like revise, revisit, revise, and remove the data that is no longer required to be part of your backup policy. This exactly has worked well for us, and we are able to get benefited from that. So the way AWS do things, we really love it. They hide all the complexities, and they give us the capabilities so that we all can consume it. And with the AWS Data Sync service, our entire data transformation was like a walk in the park. So we would like to thank AWS for that, and we are looking more forward for the collaboration. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks so much, Satish. So just to wrap up, I wanted to share a quick example of transformation within AWS. So even though we're, think of us as a digital native business, something that we've been working on. So it's no surprise, or you may have heard before, we continue this pace of innovation on behalf of our customers. So last year, almost 2,000 new features and capabilities for our customers, and that continues to accelerate. So we think about just a very basic service that has been around for a long time, EC2, so the simple compute unit. We continue to make long-term investments in order to provide a transformation capability for our customers. So a recent example last year was the launch of Nitro, our 5th generation EC2 instances, where we moved the virtualization stack into hardware rather than software, which is a great achievement. Now, that wasn't all happening overnight. That was a 5-year journey, some investment. incremental features and capabilities that have been rolled out to allow our customers to transform with this technology. Another quick example is up until recently, Intel was the only chipset available on AWS. So that's no longer the case. There's AMD EPYC processors available. And we've now built our own ARM-based chip as well, the Gravitron. So these capabilities are there for your technology transformation, but we will continue to transform ourselves on your behalf. So when EC2 launched many, many years ago, 2007, just a very few small options available through to 175 different instance types today, which I think is just incredible. So we spoke about digital transformation. We tried to define it. Is it a program? Is it a journey? Is it a new way of doing things? Is it a change of culture? All these different sort of things. Where will you start? It's entirely up to you. But just keep those three things in mind: people, culture, and technology. And of course, we'd be very privileged to be your partner along the way in all three of these areas. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the summit.